This is Jorge Cardenas, MD. This is the video number 8, and it is entitled, I am responsible for my son's addiction. It's a difficult concept to understand, so I hope that you listen to this video multiple times. When we look at people's behaviors, and we find that some are very successful financially, some other people that are not financially successful are very happy. There are some people that are neither nor happy nor financially successful. And so you begin to think, how is it that some people get it and some people just don't get it? And so from the creative force, we have learned that everything, absolutely everything in life begins as a thought. So when I look at any person at any time, for example, in my case, I can tell you that I am the result of all my thoughts that I entertain on a daily basis and that I have entertained in the past. The question is then, how did I acquire those thoughts? And when you begin to think how the acquisition of thoughts occurs, is a slow and prolonged process by which we are able to acquire some thoughts that are positive and some thoughts that are negative and destructive. And if the majority of our thinking is positive, then one can be called successful. And if the majority of our thinking is negative, then we find ourselves having to learn to deal with situation without the tools necessary to handle life. And that's what the problem of addiction is. Now, who is responsible for training a human being to think? Well, the simplest answer is that the parent is perhaps the greatest force involved in the process of training the child, and because of the close and intimate relationship that there is. But it's not the only influence, especially that with school, with newspapers and free press and the internet, all of those are allowing the production of thoughts and the repetition of thoughts that are going to be affecting the outcome that we call your reality. So since I am, as a parent, I am responsible for teaching my child, much like the example of the accountability video, which is the potty training, I can clearly say that, for example, in the case of my son or any relative, one can say that the training for the repetition of the positive thoughts just simply did not take place. Now, it is very interesting to see that in some families you have one child that goes in the straight and narrow path toward success, and the other one that seems to have a horrible time in trying to find the least destructive manner of behaving. And so, since they are exposed to the same parents and the same training, one can easily say that the learning that occurred is different from one person to the next. But it is the job of the trainer. It is the job of the trainer to ensure that the outcome, the correct thinking occurs, regardless of the person that you are being given to train. Now, so I can clearly see that my son's thinking was erroneous, but by the time I realized that it was erroneous, it was when he was an adult. Now, I know that in the healing addiction comments, we have so many different opinions about it. that it is difficult to put it all together. But if you just take a few minutes to think about it, when we have an addicted person, it's just simply common sense now, if you know the creative force, that whatever thoughts he's having or she's having, they are producing the reality that she's suffering from. Since she has not been repeating the correct thinking, one can say that she has not received the proper training to think the correct thinking that causes the correct outcome. And since she was not trained, one could almost make this a general rule that when she was a child, when she was more easily trained, either the parents did not have the ability, didn't have the time, or didn't have the interest in teaching this person. Now, so this is the only time that I'm going to say to the addict that your parents are responsible for your addiction. Now, in the parents' defense, because I'm a parent, I have to say that no one ever, up to this point, taught me that my thoughts were the ones responsible for my outcomes. I remember in going to church back when my children were little, and I would ask the elders, what are you supposed to teach them? What are you supposed to train them? And they told me, just teach them what the Bible says. And through a set of circumstances, through a busy career, through difficult relationships with their mom, I was unable, or at least I did not succeed in being consistent in the training. And now I can see clearly the mistakes I made, in that I did not hold them accountable to the things that they needed to be held accountable at the time when I should have been holding them accountable. And therefore, I clearly point out that I was probably, since I am the biggest contributor to their thinking education, that I was also the biggest deficit in their training. I like to point out that whenever you have an addicted person, it is repeated that they have to hit bottom, and that you have to let them fall, and that you have to separate and not speak to them, which really angers me, because what happens is that what they don't realize is that since they lack the training, the addicted person lacks the training, and since we now know that what the correct training is in terms of thinking, then I am probably the most capable person to help them change. And so what I have to do as a parent is really become the sponsor. And every time I meet with a person, it becomes a meeting. But unless I have learned the creative force, and unless I have learned to think correctly, I am not going to be a very good coach. I remember that when my son was in the middle of the addiction, I would repeat desperate thoughts that I know that every parent of an addicted person has repeated. And I would begin to say, I don't know what to do. I want to point out that the creative force has 4 steps: thought, word, action, and outcome. And if I say, I don't know what to do, the outcome is similar to the thought, so then I will become confused. The interesting part about it is that the Cardinal's law, or the law of attraction, says that my brain only allows me to choose the actions that fulfill the thought. So if I began confused, I would end up more confused, but the actions that I would take would be the mistakes. I compounded the mistake by saying, I'm scared what is going to happen to him. And when you say I'm scared, the outcome is going to be fear. And I will now be confused and fearful of what was going to happen in the long term to my son. And so we begin this trip, this trek, and we go to rehab, and we go to counselor, and we go to AA, and we go to, different meetings and biofeedback and different medications and so on, thinking somehow that the solution is external to our human body. When the Bible clearly teaches, and this is what I am repeating, that the problems that we have begin with our thoughts. And that's what I'm trying to teach you, that every single problem that we have in our life begins with our thinking, and if we are able to control our thinking, then our problems are going to be different. They are going to be controlled. We are going to be able to manage them. And so to those of you that feel righteous and that are having successful life, I want you to know that your success and your successes, because they are multiple, are the result of your thinking. But your thoughts were placed in there by omission or by commission from not necessarily your biological parent, but some adult that was able to introduce the thought to your brain, and that by pure chance you began to repeat that thought, and therefore you are enjoying the outcome, which is the success that you're enjoying in this moment. Now, when we are children, since you know that you did not choose your parents, but rather that your parents chose to keep you, what you have been given is a blessing, and that you have been given this training that an addicted person doesn't have. Okay? Now, and the addicted person doesn't have the training because normally the parent didn't have the training. So where are we to get this training? Well, we are going to be using the creative force to generate that knowledge and to create the training. The way I explain it to you is that if I want to teach cooking to someone, I have to learn cooking. And if you, the parent, the wife, perhaps the child of an addicted person, is trying to change the addicted person, I want you to know that you first have to go through the training, and by learning that your thoughts are creating your actions and therefore your outcomes, then we need to begin really by training you. And when I make you a good sponsor, which is really not very difficult, then you are going to become the force behind the addicted person's change. And the change will be inevitable, because what happens is that you are going to be changing how much accountability you are holding this addicted person to. And again, I want to emphasize that it's not very difficult, and I want to give you a reference that I want you to simply go and listen to this program, the Total Transformation Program by Mr. Lehman, where the person that is going to be the sponsor is going to be learning to hold the addicted person accountable. And the process is miserably simple, because once you begin to hold them accountable, again, to thinking, to repetition of thinking, to the actions and to the outcomes, the addicted person is going to begin to change their thought. And whenever they repeat the new thought, some thought that we are going to introduce later on, then the outcome inevitably comes different but positive. I will continue adding the next videos that are going to teach a sponsor to become a good sponsor, i.e. the parent, the wife, the child. Thank you.